Penelope Moffet, Mary Boehm, and Robert Knox. And we've got 8, count them 8 readers at the open mic. So why don't you get us started, Penelope? Penelope is the author of 2 chapbooks. Most recently, It Isn't That They Mean to Kill You, published by Arroyo Seco Press in 2018. She's worked as a legal secretary for the last 24 years. Before that, she was a freelance writer, photographer, and editor with a few steady gigs as a publicist for a special education school and a senior editor at the UCLA for the Center for the Study of Women. In the 80s and 90s, she was a frequent contributor of articles to the LA Times and other publications, but abandoned journalism for poetry because poetry is so much more profitable, as we all know. She lives in Culver City with 2 demanding cats. Please mute yourself if you're not the reader, and I'm going to do that right now too.
Thank you, Robbie. I'm going to read 4 short poems. They've all been published by Verse Virtual in the last 4 years. And I also want to say thank you to Robbie for inviting me to participate in this, and to Robbie and Jim Lewis for keeping this series going. This is a place I like to come each month, usually as a listener. Happy to be reading today. The poem, this is one of the first poems that was published in Verse Virtual in 2017. And it was first published at the Raven Chronicles, a magazine out of Seattle. And later it became the... Did anybody hear an echo there?
Rick needs to mute.
My voice seemed to be echoing. Okay, good, it stopped. It's the last poem in a chapbook called It Isn't That They Mean to Kill You, published by Arroyo Seco Press in 2018. And the thing you need to know about this poem is that it contains a character named Ka, spelled K-A-W. And Ka is a raven, and he was a raven who lived at a place in the desert where I spent quite a lot of time, my friend Jane Culp's house out near Anza. And one of the things about staying at Jane's is that you have a lot of bird duties, and if she's not there, and she usually wasn't when I was there. So this is the last poem in the book. And Ka comes back for more. Greedy bird, landing on the porch rail, announcing your presence and your name. Twice today already I've put meatball offerings in your bowl to elevate the undergirding puppy chow. Twilight, the gob of cow fat just bestowed is not for you. It's consecrated to the kit fox god, 4-footed spirit expected after dark. But you, dear bird, are a jealous bird, and here you are again, glossy, self-entitled thief, spearing the 6-inch yellow blob and gliding off down canyon, for once mollified and mute. Thanks. And the second poem is called It's Only Dawn. It was first published in Verse Virtual and later republished in an anthology of climate crisis poetry called California Fire and Water. It's only dawn. It's only dawn, sun blazing through oak heart, but it could be a closer fire, lighting veins and capillaries, turning the sky orange. Leaves and branches are a lattice work of sugar waiting to be melted in the fire's mouth. Soon the sun will ride high overhead. Soon the air will blue, mirroring the lake below. Soon heat will rise without a hint of smoke, as if nowhere in the world is burning. And then the last two poems were both published in Verse Ritual in 2020. This one was, I think, in April. It's called Wanting to Pray. If I could connect to the rivers under the streets, swim to the sea, I would jump in. Too far removed from my childhood faith, too long in the habit of questions. I want something to pray to, therefore I pray, not so differently from the man with his head pressed to the concrete beside a tree, his greasy hair falling forward, his backpack and plastic bag dropped nearby, as if he's found scripture written on a manhole cover, as if we could map our way back to the common good. And the last poem was written election week, November 2020, and appeared in the December 2020 Verse Ritual. It contains a statistic which is way out of date, that remember the first week of November, this is what the number was. Beautiful day. Thank you to the fruit fly that tried repeatedly to kiss me when I sat down at this desk. Thank you to the cat who tried to upchuck in my slippers while I watched a beautiful day in the neighborhood last night. Thank you to the motorcycle roaring up the street each afternoon unmufflered, and the maskless smokers on the corner. It's a beautiful day in my neighborhood, despite the 230,000 Americans dead in 8 months because the president cares only for himself. Thank you to the maples and the sycamores, the pepper trees and palms I see each time I walk the better neighborhood next to mine. Thank you to the metropolis of finches chirping as they flit through a magnolia tree's leaves at dusk. Thank you to the ventilator I hope never to be tethered to, and thank you to the brave ones who would do the tethering. Thank you to my legs, which take me where I want to go for now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. I just that's a continuation of your poem, I guess. Thank you very much for your poems. I appreciate them. I'm lucky enough to hear Penelope's poems every week in a little workshop that we do on Sunday. I get to hear them as they emerge. So thanks very much. Our next reader is Mary Boehm. A German-born UK national, Mary Boehm lives and works in Lima, Peru, and she wins the prize for the furthest away, probably from me. Author of 2 novels and Tangents, a full-length poetry collection published in the UK in 2010-11. Her work has been widely published in the US in poetry journals, online and in print. She was 3 times winner of the now defunct Goodreads monthly competition and has twice been nominated for a pushcart. Recent poetry collections, From the Ruhr to Somewhere Near Dresden, 1939 to 1949, A Child's Journey, and Peru Blues, or Lady Gaga Won't Be Back. Her latest full-length poetry manuscript, The Rain Girl, has been published by Chaffinch Press in August 2020. Take it away, Rosemary. I don't know how to.
I have to unmute. I muted myself, and I know how to unmute myself. I just want to say to Robbie that I enjoy these moments very much. I'm delighted that you invited me to be a feature poet, And this time I won't shamelessly promote any of my books. I just want to read a few poems that have been published before and hope you enjoy them. Jade Mornings in Dark Alleys. That is from Antwerp in the Port City, 1959. Cobblestones. For a heartbeat, there are highlights on the small, rounded, slippery boulders, polished by horses' hooves, motor cars, shoes, sneakers, vertiginous heels, and boots of all colors. Not only the light, even the air is furtive here. Rubbish bins overflow with last night's condoms, and the odor of old urine and feces is lifted and carried by the wind. The women huddle in doorways near advertising pillars. They share their stories on many mornings during a breather. Soup, deep drugs and strong cigarettes, black coffee and a cognac or two. Some of them virtually illiterate, thrown into the street at 8 or 6 or 12, abused by fathers or stepfathers, beaten, abandoned, moved from orphanage to orphanage, foster home to foster parents. There are those who have kids. Head bent, the old woman walks, a scarf barely covering her curlers, her ankles swollen, her feet in slippers, a baguette under her arm. For years now, her place has been behind the till. Payment in advance, s'il vous plaît. She's doing evenings, dresses up, big river pearls on long strings slipping between her blouse and those wrinkled two mounds pressed into a low-cut bra. Bright red lipstick collects in cracks just above her mouth. Her eyes don't smile. Voilà, monsieur, your receipt. It's cash for personal services. This was published in Red River. The next one is a strange one. Collector of Days. An old man, stooped, a black suit, cardboard collar, a gray beard, glasses over sad, sunken eyes, a much-fingered wooden box, an old dark shop, antique clocks, hesitant chimes. The old man buys days, dog days, death days, murderous ones. The day a woman causes her lover's death, the night a father witnessed his daughter's suicide, the afternoon a mother helplessly watched her small son drown, the day the earth stood still. All come to him to sell their worst days and nights, 24 hours. He takes them off their hands. He guards them in the box, cherishes the treasures it contains, strokes it gently before he settles for the night. But he doesn't sleep. His clients forget their transactions. Men and women wonder where Tuesday has gone, Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, or why the matron down the road is dressed up to go to church on a Saturday. Emptiness accompanies the collector. His clocks ring hollow. The lights stop at the dirt-covered windows. His hunger never sated. Some days cannot be bought. That was published by Misfit. And here we have the trouble of our age. Peter Pan. It was after he set the CEO's hair on fire when he was let go for the first time. He wanted to stay forever young, but slowly the surgery failed and he was going south in a big way. He knew why he'd been so reluctant to leave Never Never. Wendy broadened out at the hips and needed glasses. Her hearing wasn't so hot any longer. She got a bit upset when he took up with the fairies. He knew his particular game was up, and they giggled behind those busy hands which fluttered like large butterfly wings, and they whispered. So he looked among the mothballs for his suit, but he'd forgotten how to fly. When he got to the place, the hinges had busted and nobody was in. That was published by Red River. I think I have time for one last one. That makes 4. Pull up and go. The streets too narrow, the boys too ugly, mother to mother. Landscapes made from iron and stainless steel, gasometers and loading cranes on coal trains. There was one row of sycamores and the forest where acid rain at the green. I kissed Heinz in the fire-red light of the glowing slag runoff, or rather he kissed me, and wet and slobbery it was, and the mirror showed no change, no maturing. My sacrifice had left no visible mark. And he told. I couldn't wait to get out, reinvent myself, go where no one knew that I grew up in a world of soot and glowing steel, that I kissed the wrong boy at the wrong time, that I once wore woolly knickers and had no idea what virginity was. And how I wish I could go home again, but they don't remember me. That was published in Rusty Truck Poetry.
Thanks, Rosemary. You've taken us to a lot of different places in those poems.
Well, that's what I did. I left my home behind and went off and discovered the world.
Our next and last feature today is Robert Knox. He's a poet, fiction writer, a Boston Globe correspondent, and the author of a novel based on the Sacco and Vanzetti case titled Soussow's Lane. He was selected as a finalist for the Massachusetts Cultural Council Fellowship for his short story Lost. Another novel, Carpa Talisman, won a competition for work of speculative fiction and is scheduled for publication this year. As a contributing editor for Verse Virtual, his poems appear regularly on that site and have also appeared in a number of other journals. His poetry chapbooks, Gardeners Do It With Their Hands Dirty, was nominated for a Massachusetts Best Book Award. Take it away, Robert.
You gotta unmute.
I'll get it.
Details. All right. These are poems about the seasons. I think almost all of these have been published in Verse Virtual. This one I wrote in March of last year, but just before everything shut down. Skipping about. We're going right to summer. All winter freakishly quiet, as if someone had put a bag over its mouth and told it sternly to calm down. We have other things to think about, but will we think them? Winter moped, complained about the food, concluded there was no good place to ski around here, threw up its hands at the prices for Cuisine New England, and left town on the early side. Now they're doing for spring. No leaves on the trees and high in the 70s. Grown people in shorts pretending they're just back from the Outer Bank or the jangling Keys, east, west, or south, or the inner self, or the inland canalway to great age in warm and seasonless climes where the blood slows and stare-offs with iguanas pass for conversation. Okay, ye gods, I can take a day or two of this mixed up march, but do not sell the circus animals quite yet, for we may still have need of lions. I'm gonna go with what I have. Right. Stoppage. Actually, this one was written last year, just about the time when everything did stop. Sometime Thursday afternoon, they canceled the world. The trees began disappearing from my neighbor's yard, one by incautious one, forced to stop growing by powers who knew better. The cars on the street sheepishly parked in front of neighbors' houses by those who have too many vehicles for their own driveways strangely disappear, and already I miss them. And even the trashy come-ons from those insufficiently contained recycling attempts that blow annoyingly week after week into our yard seem a tender reminder of a past that I hope would return one day, but no one is offering a timetable or a guarantee. This one, entitled The Old Days, is about the dark days of early winter. These were the old days I'm thinking of. Days not of family or the holiday calendar. Days of wilderness, of so much darkness, a twilight kingdom. I climbed the hill you reach by crossing the street where a pasture spreads upward, simply because the houses come to an end. And why should there not be a field? Dry grass, thistleweed, a wild shrub with a sharp-tongued scent, juniper. Round-shouldered rocks emerged from the grass like bones from the graves of ancient creatures, the hill people that lived here before we came, buried by time. But time missed a few spots, distracted perhaps by some new tabula rasa of human intervention. I climb at the end of day because the days end so soon and because there it was, so close. Imagine living where you find the sunset spot by walking down the street, then climbing freely through the juniper field because you could not tell whether any living soul dwelled in the nearest house, and you knew the only others who came to the hill and might conceivably dispute your visit were the ghosts. This one, which was just written last December, is not about the December holidays and has a couple of references to Philadelphia. You want it lighter. Solstice day. Just wait. Whole seconds more of light coming tomorrow. You can see it in the silver blue water of the harbor, pale with the reminiscence of ice. Change is in the air. We inch our way around the sun, the suave conjunction of planetary influences apparent momentarily from a bridge over the Schuylkill River until clouds reform to swallow the moment. We arrive in the city of daughterly love to find the light charmed into strings of tiny stars, skilled hands brightening short days with carrot soup, homegrown basil, morning mimosas, and all those other gifts of practical affection. This one, which I wrote for autumn, is obviously a fiction, as you can tell from the title, what grumpy old white men are like. Grumpy old white men are obsessed with their yards. Each little house a castle keep, an enclave to manage, clean and neat, and cars to wash, machines to run, a hearty substitute for fun. They fire up their loud device and chase the leaves down every street, their blowers keeping stripped and neat, while my poor ears forever pay the price. They clear the land of all contagion, and I who am contagion's name, strike fear in every hallowed nation. Other men, that is, are just the same. Envoy, I am the country of leaves. I am inversion. I am the winter king preparing for the sacrifice. I am the torch and the bringer of ruin. Surely the seasons will flow again. How are we doing on time? Anybody?
You're fine.
Okay. All right. Another poem about the 2020 election, written when things were still looking kind of bad. The morning after the morning after. I'm stepping back from the ledge. The view from there is sickening. A landscape roamed by entitled monsters, on whom we have pinned badges of honor for so much crapping on the landscape. Specimen days in a ravaged land, sticks with dead flowers, stones with the faces of people one might have known. Today, a week from a killing freeze, the sun shines on the still breathing leaves and the compost bin keeps churning. We walk the edges of a fault line, burned by the frost of a dead man's embraces, watching spellbound as the monster bleeds out, but dare not yet descend into the pit. Can I do this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
And finally, an attempt at humor, or maybe I shouldn't be saying that. Just as we go into the spring season of sacred holidays, a poem actually written in April of 2020, last year. Sacred days in a time of virus. A people must remember themselves forward. Old Pharaoh forgets them. He suffers them to go forth and worship in the house of pandemic. He leads them through the wilderness to the valley of death, mistaking it for Disney World. A people must tell themselves their own stories. They must imagine a time when they will go barefaced through the world, when they will not take a wrong turn into the valley of the sideshow of death, but enter amid hosannas into the garden of peas blossoms and sprouting wheat, and the yeast of uplifted spirits will take its own good old time in rising. They will not taste of the bread of affliction, but break the soft bread, challah maybe, or one of those Italian specialties with candied fruit. They will eat of the bread embedded with dried fruit and the occasional fortunate nugget of dark chocolate. And the people themselves will be brown and fair, dark and light. Their hair will be like the maiden grasses and golden like ripe grain in the sun. And their features will speak of joy, their eyes of banded gems and fungible jewels, their futures shining like a day in June. Is it too soon to remember forward a day in June? Too soon to admire a hyacinth in bloom? Already the necklaces of the gardens sing of yellow, white, and purple. Already we have come through. Trees blossom with the shine of remembered summers in the agate of their joyful eyes. Hearts shall sing old songs. Welcome, happy morning. Regard that melancholy kid that my father bought with 2 zuzim. Then all hell broke out. The deserts bloom and the pipelines fall away. Light shines in the sacred mountains. Every race and nation shall find that they have zoomed out of Egypt. We have all been tried and questioned. We are all recovering. We have stories to tell, weepers and whoppers. We hear punchlines in our sleep and wake to a garden of colorful candy charms. Should that be it? Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks to the features today. That was awesome. We now have our open mic. We're going to start with Sabne Rosnick, otherwise known as Amy McDougall. And it's, what is it, Jim? 2 poems or 5 minutes, whichever comes first.
That is correct. If the 2 poems are less than 5 minutes, that's still 2 poems and you're done.
Okay, I'll do my best. I'm terrible at keeping track of my own time though. Just so everybody's clear, my name is Sabna Rosnick. I've noticed people have difficulty with it, and that's okay. When I wear this dress, it makes me want to read from this book. This book is called Linger to Look, and this is Chaldean Hillbilly. I tried to live my lie to you. You changed the outline to give me strength. I wept for the duration of the meeting, had barely registered the giving door in the late afternoon sky when turning, I nearly fell into you. Your delicate white hand reached for me without touching. Are you going to be okay? Such earnest, soft tones I have never heard before or since, but how to look you in the eye. I remember your tie and that your jacket was still buttoned, but also it seems that you were not alone. I couldn't speak, could hardly see or stand, somehow managed to nod like a marionette someone unseen controlled, stumbled like a shameless drunk just to get away. Cincinnati never hurt me. Now, over a year later, standing on the levee, watching lights on black water, I want to scream the truth to you. No, most beautiful Chaldean hillbilly, I am not ever okay. Almost, though, when it snows, for you are much like snow. Do you know that? Pristine, peaceful when it falls, making the observer feel warm, cozy, safe. And when it has lain, there is the profound quiet, unique, welcome as birdsong, maybe more so because it is rare. And do I have time for one more?
Yes, you do.
Okay, this is called rock sharky, and rock sharky is the Arabic word for what we know as belly dance. That's the name of the poem, rock sharky. Isam Hushan, beat out the rain that falls on Appalachian trees, beat out your lines that give life, tabla, si'idi, to the dancers who come to you to shimmy and to play. Katim al-Sahar, sing. Sing the love of Nizar Kabani and my love and the love of all, like rain that falls on Appalachian trees. Zagarit. So there you go. Thank you.
Excellent ululation, Sabni.
Good word.
Our next reader is Leonard Germanera, and he hasn't graced our virtual stage before, I don't believe. He's new to Verse Virtual, and I hope that he'll frequent our platform.
Thank you, Robbie. I have a couple of poems for you. They're from my book, Backstory. I had reconstructive back surgery a couple of years ago. The book came out last year just before the fire season, and that went, of course, right into the COVID season. So here we are. Goes by Len. The first thing I see, dry erase board with numbers to call just in case, then her. I've been filleted to repair discs undone, perhaps completely, save nerves, almost irreparable. I do this because I'm drawn to her next move, inexorably. The next heated exchange, can't think of another reason. Post-surgery, I ask her, am I the most intelligent custodian she knows? She pauses for effect and says, yes. Later that day, I wake in a room with no walls, a curtain between my realities, however tenuous. The party next door is having Mickey D's, a smell most distinct. They're celebrating Big Brother's surviving throat slit and head stomp. I fall into a fitful sleep, oxycodoned with all its attendant drawbacks. She's there when I wake, sleep, make. During my stay in what was previously a children's ward, now overflow. Glance over my shoulder of a night that does not end, past my ass like a moon of Jupiter, to a young nurse, her hands on chin. She sighs, says, I won't say yes until my other would do what she does for you without question, you lucky son of a bitch. Thank you. And my last poem is called One Ring. We met, I couldn't say day or night. Heavily drugged memories are not to be trusted. I asked his name, didn't catch it. He asked mine, kept on asking questions, called me neighbor Lenny while making an almost comical sucking sound in between screams. The nurses tried to help him cope. He came onto them with cartoonish guile, unapologetically crude, man-ick. It got ugly. Just before he passed out, he told me his daughter was with him on the bike that went under the truck, him driving effed up. I've just had reconstructive back surgery. Can't look that pain in the eye, know how to live with it, or even if the story is real. Comes a murmur of interns making rounds, interrupting everyone, and you feel them before you hear them. Intersection of education and expectations. Didn't catch it, took this to be the right time. He began shouting up a revival for something specific, for the pain. Knows all the names. After a spirited debate, they settle on nerve blockers, but not before they tell, didn't catch it. We'll need to measure what you feel. Give it a number when we scrape. Yes, we have to do this. Give it a number. Undoubtedly a response for his previously boorish behavior. I wouldn't wager he gets it, or that I get any sleep, whatever time it is. Thank you.
Oh, sounds grueling. Thank you for the poems. Our next reader is Lori Howe, and I believe this is her first time at the open mic. No, it's her second. So you're there, aren't you, Lori? I saw you earlier. Caitlin, I can't hear you.
I thought I was next.
Oh, I'm sorry, you are.
Okay.
I'm sorry. So
That's okay.
Next.
I was
You're
like,
next.
did I sign up for the wrong thing?
No, I think I had my finger covering.
That's okay. Hello, everyone. I've seen a lot of you before, but if you don't know me, I live in Alaska. That's my claim to fame. And I'm going to read you the two poems that I had published in the most recent issue of Verse Virtual. First one's really short, and the second one is normal length, I guess, whatever normal length is for a poem. First one is called Cookbook, with thanks to Julia O'Malley. A cookbook sparks a conversation about culture and climate change that circles through privilege, rights, and blame, back to the question of what exactly is to be done about all this. What other wisdom might we unearth? Doors and mouths might be opened by hunger on a holiday that celebrates connection and creation. And honestly, I don't remember which holiday I was referring to when I wrote that poem. You could probably pick a number of them. But that cookbook that I reference is actually a pretty interesting one. So if you want to look up Julia O'Malley and her cookbook, I recommend it. The next one is called Maintenance. Yeah, it was probably Thanksgiving, Robbie. Maintenance. I arrived tired after work at the oil change place to find the front door locked due to wind and the name changed to Diamond-Plated Automotive, as if it were a giant public piece of jewelry and not a home for grease monkeys disguised as a place of business. Inside, the girls answer the phones, breathe the shop's new name into their receivers so fast it seems like I'm the last to know. This isn't Mr. Lube anymore. I don't know if the transition was driven by an effort to localize or simply the whim of a new owner looking to start with a clean slate, except for the old signs on the wall, in the windowsill, and on the storefront. My silent irritation at this departure from my quarterly routine is enough to make me wonder if I've gotten too comfortable in my prejudices and this old town of mine. If it's time to move on, expect the unfamiliar in a way that keeps the mind open, performs that necessary maintenance on the ever-rumbling soul. Thank you.
Sorry for nearly skipping you. Now it's time for Lori Howe, if she is still there, to read for us. Okay, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to read The Phenomenologist's Last Request. It's a poem I wrote about a year ago, right before everything happened, before we knew what was coming. And I wrote this poem on the back of an envelope under a palapa on a white sand beach in Mexico. And it's actually going to be appearing in the April issue of Verse Virtual. So I'll read this for you. The phenomenologist's last request for Boehm. When I die and they in somber suits come with the odd, finite desire to assign all that is human and thereby unfathomable to the knowability of numbers. A series of 3 for the weight of my bones and all they've carried. 2 flimsy characters for the infinity of breaths, the universe of dreams. Ask them instead to record my age, not in the empty black and white shoebox of 2 dead and finished numbers, but in hieroglyphs of the sea, in pints of good aromatic vanilla, in rafts of prehistoric croaking pelicans, in oaken barrels of dark red wine, in casks of salt crystals, in sacks of nutmeg, and an alphabetic strand of loves, like prayer flags, as colored and scented as a summer market. Orange peel, blue hydrangeas, a forest of rosemary. Ask them instead to record my weight in the silver and aquamarine scales of fish I've watched while dangling by one inhalation in warm, briny water, in the insouciant chimes of the grackle, in the billowing of birds' wings taking flight in a sweet yellow cloud. For what are we, really, coming into this world or leaving it? But shaking new-formed poems, feeling our way across the surface in the green eyes of an eel, the tully grace of a heron. And if you can, let them record my last words, not as some parched request for more time or water, but in the gold of the sun inked in warbled skeins through layers of clear turquoise sea, tracing the ever-changing who of me onto clean white sand to be crossed and crossed again by tiny gossamer fish, seeking before the tide draws out a final bite of something sweet. Thank you.
As Caitlin remarked, that was a big envelope. Thanks so much. Our next reader is Betsy Mars.
Hi, thank you. I didn't realize that. I was thinking Jefferson had beaten me to the sign up. But okay, it's great to be here with you. And it's all been, everybody's just been amazing. I hate to follow you in the open mic. I hope you can hear me okay. I've had computer difficulties, but I have a huge microphone now. Okay, I'm gonna read the 2 that were in the March issue of Verse Virtual. And the first one is called Jack Gets Dusty. Uncle Jack still exists on magnetic tape, but the VHS no longer works. I took him to a specialty shop to have him transferred to a modern format, and he came back with a hole in his middle, but I don't think he feels it. Not in his windowed envelope. There's that envelope on the fireplace, gathering dust until I can face his wry voice and broad face again, heavier in the brow, but so much like my father's. And that was originally published in Misfit magazine. The second one I had is very short. I don't know if you're familiar with the book Stiff by Mary Roach, but she has these amazing books, and it was on the curious life of corpses, I think. And I came across the term morgue hardened, which I thought was very interesting. And it's actually something I'm sure a lot of people are experiencing during the pandemic who work in the medical field. So it's kind of timely. Morgue hardened. Once you've worked in a morgue, smelled the putrid smells, inhaled the exhales of dead flesh and stomach contents, opened mouths clamped in rigor mortis and closed unseeing eyes. Can you be light? Can you illuminate the cause and time of death? Each blue body, your future, confronting and affronting your nostrils and dreams. A cold slap in the face of denial and anger and all of those other stages of grief, which are just stepping stones to acceptance as the world empties of the ones you love. And that one was originally published in Sheila Nigig. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Betsy. I had to pause there for a minute because of that poem. Our next reader is John Krieger.
Hi, everyone. Thanks to the features and to the open mic readers before me. It's a pleasure to be here. Gaslight, 10 generations in 4 parts. Late-term betrayal. There are no slaves. Anyone that sets foot here becomes free. Men and women are equal before the law. Article 19, Pinochet's Constitution. Our fathers swore at our nation's conception, all men are created equal with unalienable rights, life, liberty. 23 years later, they aborted their oath, signed a constitution which denied those rights to women, Native people, slaves, forsaking eternal truth. Whiteness is all colors. Even Chile's tyrant did better. Martha's dowry and George's will. He was one of the few who was not carried away by power, Robert Frost. He was 11, heir to the family farm and 10 slaves. Later that year, he bought 8 more and yet another 7 as a young man. He lived 3 generations. At his death, he owned 123 and 153 more. Martha's dowry doubled in their 20-year marriage. His and hers hostage to the law, destined for return to her first husband's heirs. George's death freed his own, though he left it to Martha to sign their deeds. He was our first king in all but name, principled and elegant, said Abigail Adams. Afterwards, from the writing workshop. 1, it's didactic. 2, how many times did someone post the same thing on Twitter today? 3, it tells me what to think. 4, I can't tell if the piece is meant to undercut or support the Frost quote. These from 4 of the 5 men present. The 5th abruptly left the workshop as I read the poem. When he called me the next day, 1, it's not poetry. 2, you disrespect the father of our country. 3, most people owned slaves and you would have too. 4, it's hate speech. I urged him, you really should read White Fragility. I had given him a copy last year. He responded, I couldn't understand it. Anyway, my girl is African American. My dear friend, if we had sat together in a Berlin cafe on that Black election day in 32, sharing our art, laughing and learning, I know you would have spoken for evil, but though the beast and his brown shirts were weaker then than ours are now? Would you still have spoken so in 33 when their mad master, so like ours, triumphed? Or weeks later when their capital burned? Or the next day when their Patriot Act passed? Or the next month when their Manzanar opened? What say you now, so like then, just weeks since our president's darlings, the uncolored beasts, swarmed our Reichstag? Which of us will pick up your tab this time, and what will it be? When is the end of friendship? Will you speak for the monsters still, tender yet again, the caress of your madness to all of us who love you?
Thank you, Don. That's a tough one. Our next reader is Michael Manassian. And I'm eager to hear what he has for us.
Hi, I'm a last minute addition to the reading today. So I'm only going to read one poem from my book. It was published last year, Time is Not a River. But I wanted to give a little backstory. I lived in Florida for over 30 years. And even if you visit Florida just for a few minutes, you realize that there's nothing that's too bizarre that can't come real in front of your eyes. And this poem was inspired by a visit my friends and I made to a bar in Fort Lauderdale, which used to be called the Yankee Clipper, and it's in the shape of a cruise ship. And downstairs in the hotel, actually you have to go down, I guess, to the, well, it's not really a basement because they don't have basements in Florida, but there's this bar there with a huge aquarium behind the bar. It's about the size of a wall. And if you've ever seen the movie Analyze This, there's a scene in that movie with Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal where they're sitting at the bar and a mermaid floats by in this aquarium. And my friends and I were sitting there, and sure enough, the mermaid floated by. So I thought, mermaids, of course. So my poem is called A Mermaid Skeleton is Found Off the Gulf Coast. Lured by the postcard you sent me about the mermaid skeleton found off the Gulf Coast, I arrive in Florida. From the tops of lifeguard stations, flags fly, blue, green, yellow, red, black, and purple, a color for every danger. On the beach in Naples, waves roll in, spilling sand, shells, and fragments of bones. Dark-skinned dolphins, sleek and graceful, arrive in clusters under the pier. They break the surface, then dive again, proposing marriage with the voices of angels in a strange language that sounds like Norwegian to women lining the rails. That night, at a mass wedding, I arrive late as the brides ride on the back of their grooms, disappearing into the black waters, the moon and stars reflecting on the surface, the marriage certificates spread like confetti from the back of convertibles, driven by deer attracted by the promise of high pay, who repeat the prophecies of the past, laughing at the sight of humans caught in the headlights. Thank you. I'm muting myself.
Well, it seems I was rewriting your line, so I'm sorry for that. Hearing does that sometimes, or lack thereof. Our last reader, I'm not sure, is here. Gopal Lahiri. I don't think so. Okay. So can we plug someone last minute in?
Wasn't there somebody on Facebook who said they hadn't done it before and wanted to?
Yeah, but he's in England and he's not here right now.
I was thinking it was not a guy, but I don't know.
Shelley?
Not that I remember.
I'll do it if you want.
All right. That's okay
All
with
right.
me.
I thought John was
For
reading.
Jefferson, go for it.
Okay. All right. All right. Let me see if I have it up here on my screen. All right. This will be in Verse Virtual. No, this is in this month's Verse Virtual. It's called Memento Mori. My wife's the best looking person at this party. I'm second best. Someone's bald mother slumps in her wheelchair, surprised to be a memento mori. Their arthritic feet like satyrs' hooves. Others keep losing their flip-flops as they do the mashed potato and sing, "Do you love me?" We don't need no stinking paranormal urban fantasies, but doesn't anyone want to leave a good-looking corpse anymore? All the poets my age are now writing about death. No more heavy breathing, no more sexual healing, or swooning at life's infinite possibilities. Death, wrote the poet, be not proud. I'd like to add, at least be stylish or try to smell nice. Don't feel bad. It's not you, it's formaldehyde.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for a fun reading. It was a pleasure to see you all. And I think I actually recorded this correctly. So with any luck, I'll be able to download it with Jim's help to YouTube. All
Well,
right.
thank you both very much.